Hi guys, Advanced Computing here. In this video I'm going to be showing you my progress in C Sharp so far. So this is my first ever program in C Sharp here in Visual Studio Code, and you can see the first thing I've done here is I've changed the title of the console to V using the console.title. Okay, and it says here gets or sets the title to display in the console title bar. Then the next thing I've done is I've changed the foreground color. In our case, the foreground is the text. So again, gets or sets the foreground color of the console, and it's going to be console color dot green. Specifies constant that define foreground and background colors for the console. Yeah, so I could change the color to something else if I wanted, like blue or red. And then the console window height is when the console opens, it will open in a size that fits 40 lines in it. Okay, so we'll see that now. When I hit F5, there we go. That's the title, which is V. Then the foreground color is green, and there will be 40 lines that you can fit into this console. Okay. Then the next thing I've done is started a conversation basically with the computer. I've just programmed it what to say. So console.writeLine writes a line. So it says writes the specified string value followed by the current line terminated to the standard output stream. So in the console, it will write, hello, what is your name? Okay. And then here I've set a string. So user name is a variable and it's a string. Okay, it's a variable name. And the username is going to be set to console.readline. Now, console.readline is when you type console.readline, it opens up a line for the user to input something in. So it's kind of like the input in Python, except here you use console.readline. So let's see those first two lines. Let's see how they look. So you'll see that the computer says, hello, what is your name? And then it's going to let me type something. And whatever I type will be stored as a string in this variable user name. Okay, so it wants me to type my name, so I'm just going to type my name. Okay, and yeah, it just stores it into user. You won't be able to see that, but obviously you can see that it remembers it here. So because I've called it here, on the next line I've written console.writeLine hello plus username, and username was whatever I inputted up here, so it remembers that. And then it says nice to meet you. All right, and then I programmed it to ask another question here. It's going to ask me my favorite color. Next, I'm going to type my favorite color. And again, that's going to set that as a string. It's going to set that to user color. So user color is a variable that stores a string. And in this case, it's going to be storing my favorite color. And then again, after that, it will write my favorite color plus exclamation mark. That's cool. Mine is yellow. So again, it will remember my favorite color here because it's stored in the variable user color, which is a string. So let's hit F5 again. Now we can see all of that run. That's the conversation that I've made, very short. So yes, that's my name. Nice to meet you. What is your favorite color? Well, blue, and you'll see that it remembers blue. Blue, that's cool. Mine is yellow. Okay, and then we move on to the next thing, which I will show you here now. So this is a calculator. All right, and the first thing I've done is I've wrote double num. So num1 is the name as a variable name, all right, and the type of the variable is a double. And a double is like a float, but it has many more decimals after it. So you can have a lot more decimals after decimal digits after the decimal point. And this improves the accuracy of the number. So here I can put a really long decimal number and it would remember it as a double. Okay, so we now know that num1 and num2 are double types, but they do not have anything assigned to them. So they currently have no value. All right. Now console.write input a number. This is just like write line, but you'll notice that this has no line here. And this is because I want it to keep the uh, I want the user to be able to write on the same line afterwards. So say this executes, right? If you noticed up here, after this executed, it moved on to the next line. So this thing here moved on to the next line like this. But with write, what it does is after it's executed this, all right, so say it's executing now, after console.write executes, instead of going over to the next line, so instead of going over to the next line like write line, it just stops over here. So it doesn't go onto a new line. And this allows the user to just type whatever they want over here. All right, I'll show you that now. But first, it's going to ask you to input a number. Then the num1 that we stored up here as a variable name, and remember it's a double, num1 is going to be equal to whatever the user inputted, but it's going to be changed to a double first. So this convert.double changes whatever the user inputted into a double. Now remember, when the user inputs something into console.readline, it is immediately a string, because you can see here string console.readline. So if you just put num1 is equal to console.readline, that wouldn't work, because obviously you can't assign a string to num1 when it's a double. Okay, so if we remove this to double, right, and this convert.toDouble, you'll see what happens. It will be underlined in red. It says cannot implicitly convert type string to double, which is why we need to manually convert it into a double. So convert.toDouble. Okay, very good. So now the string will be converted to a double and then stored into num1. And then the same thing happens for num2 here. We just ask it to write a second number, and then it converts it again from a string to a double and then stores it into num2 over here. And then the result is another variable, all right? So result is a variable here, and again we can see that it's a double. So just like this, it's a double. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do the multiplication of those two numbers, and result will be whatever that is. Okay, and then I can just write console.writeLine, the result is, and then whatever the variable has stored in it. So whatever the variable's value is, it will print it. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what that looks like. So after the first conversation, we'll see the calculator. So yes, here we go. Now it's going to ask me to input a number, which is good. It's just what we said we wanted to do over here. So yeah, so input a number first. It's asking me. Now this will be num1. Remember, when I type a number, it will be stored into num1. So num2, number 2. And we're going to put a second number, which is like number 5. Okay, and it's going to multiply these two now. So number 5 will be stored as num2, and the result should be 10. It should print the result is colon 10. There we go. It prints the result is colon 10, just like we asked it to over here on this last line. Okay, and you'll notice here that because I wrote console.write over here, all right, if you look back here, you see that it allows me to type the number 2 in the same line as that text that the computer printed. Whereas up here, when I wrote console.writeLine for hello, what is your name? You see it says console.writeLine. That's why it asked me to type this onto the next line. Whereas for numbers, it looks much neater if you just type it onto the same line after the colon. All right, so that's that calculator. Here I've done, well, an average of 3 numbers. Okay, so again, I'm using doubles just because I want the user to be able to say if they want to use a decimal number, then they can. But here it's pretty much the same thing. We just ask them to enter the first number. Then obviously whatever they write is a string here. Then it gets converted to a double, and then it gets stored in X as a double. And then the same thing for the second number, string double stored as a double in the variable Y, and then string double then stored as a double here in Z. Okay, and then the result, well, the result is also going to be a double, just so that we can be more accurate. But the result of an average of 3 numbers is obviously first you add them up, so we're adding X, Y, and Z, and then we're dividing it by 3, and that's what result 2 is going to be. Result 2 is going to be stored as the answer to this. All right, and then we just need to write console.writeLine, the average of those 3 numbers is, and then it should print the result. So we can go ahead and try that now. So again, we'll go through all of this. I just like to keep this here just to make sure that it's always working. Okay, enter the first number, 6, 7, and if I enter 8, you'll see that the average is going to be it's going to be 7. Now, if you have 3 numbers that are consecutive, so like 6, 7, or 8, or 8, 9, 10, the average of the 3 will always be the middle one. So in 6, 7, and 8, the average of the 3 numbers is going to be 7. So that's a little trick for you guys to remember here. So if I type 8 and then click enter, you see that the average of the three numbers is 7. Ignore this bottom line for now, just look at this line. The average of the three numbers is 7. So yeah, even if we did 3, 4, and 5, it would be 4, which is exactly what we're going to do next. So here I've written a function, okay? So this is not a function, this is just multiple lines of code here. But afterwards here, I've written a function, okay? So to create a function or a method, as they call it, you need to write it outside of the static void main, because this is always what's going to run when you first open the program. I mean, when you first like ask the program to run, it will always run whatever's in static void main. But if we wanted to create a function and only call it when we want to use it, then we have to do that, create that function outside of the public static void main. I've called it average here, so all you need to do is write public static void average, okay? Uh, and it takes three arguments here, okay? So here I've asked it to take three arguments, which are all floats. So remember, we need to specify, and these are just letters. These can be whatever you want them to be, but I've just chosen A, B, C for this purpose here. So they're all going to be floats, just so that the user can type in floats if they want to be more accurate. All right, and average is the name of the function or method. And then we're just going to ask it to do console.writeLine. So I'm going to ask the computer to write the average of the three numbers. So this is doing an average using a method. All right. It's just going to print the average, which is obviously a plus b plus c divided by 3. And let's see if it does that. Now, to use this method, you can't just leave it like this. You actually have to call it inside the static void main uh, bit here. So inside here, you have to actually call this function here. So calling a function, all you do is you type the name and then you give in the arguments here. So remember, I chose three arguments. So those three arguments are float A, float B, and float C. They can be whatever numbers they want, but I've done 3, 4, and 5. And again, we know that this average should be 4 because it's 7, 5, 12 divided by 3 is 4. Okay, so the average of those three numbers should be 4. And that is how we've called the function. So if we go to F5 now, just to start debugging, we can run this code again, and we can go ahead and see. I'm sure you saw in the last example there that actually it did do it. So, oh, that's a big number. Okay, yep, that's a big average. But this last line is what we need to look at here. The average of those three numbers is 4. So it already knew what it was going to do with this average function because I'd already told it what to do. It didn't ask me to input anything because I'd already given its arguments here inside this code. Instead of having to type it, it already knew. So the arguments were given. If I wanted to give the arguments, I could. I would just have to write another few lines for that here. All right, or I could just tell it to take no arguments, and then inside the function, I could tell it what to do using the console.readLine functions. So yeah, that's my progress in C Sharp. I mean, still a few things I have to understand. Functions and methods, especially this is my first ever function that I've written. So there's loads of other things you can do in C Sharp that I need to learn. But I have learned quite a bit about doubles, floats, the types of things they have in C Sharp. Obviously, these are a bit confusing. Static void main and this class program and namespace, whatever all of this is. But I think I've gotten the fact that void means that it won't return anything because obviously this code on its own, like just this code here, won't return anything. I think that's why void is there. All right. As for static and public, well, I'm not so sure yet, but I will find out. Okay. So yeah, that's my progress in C Sharp. I've done many things here using, you can see what I've done by reading these green things. So the first thing I did was change the appearance. Then I started a conversation, so user input output. Then I made a calculator, a very basic one, not like the one that I made in my Python video last time. And then I did an average of three numbers, and I also did an average of three numbers using a function taking arguments. So two different ways I did that. Now the next thing I want to try and do is I want to create some calculator that um, calculates the average of an X amount of numbers. So I could just type the amount first, the amount of numbers I want to find an average of first, and then it will keep asking me for the numbers until it's met that X number that I want, and then it will divide it by the X number to find the average. So yeah, that's all for this video, guys. Thank you for watching. If you did like this video, then please like, share, and subscribe with your friends. We're almost at 100 subs. That's all for this video, really. C# is quite an interesting language, very different to Python, as you can see. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one, guys. Goodbye.